Hey guys, today we talk about how to become a 10x engineer. And a big thing there is first getting your own stuff in order and then taking that step to help others reach that next level. That's also where my guest comes in. He's currently developer advocate over at JP Morgan, and he also wrote this book, which is called Communication for Engineers. My guest, Chris Laffra. If you want to support the show, don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube and a little comment, and follow us on your favorite podcast platforms as well. Enjoy.
Beyond Coding. Welcome to Beyond Coding, a dive into the world of successful people in IT. From your sponsors, Zebia, creating digital leaders. Here's your host, Patrick Akil.
Hey Chris.
Hi Patrick.
How's it going?
I'm good.
Cool. Very happy to have you here. And let's kick it off then. So today I brought you on to talk about how to be or how to become someone that's a 10x developer, right? It's a big term and it's something that a lot of people might aspire to be, but it doesn't necessarily mean you produce code 10 times more fast than your peers, for example. But what does that mean then? And how do you think you can get to that level?
So that's a quick question that requires a really long answer, right?
It's a big one.
It's a good start. First of all, I think, I don't know too many 10x developers. And if I know them, it's usually the other developers in the team hate them.
Okay.
Because either they're jealous of their productivity or they have to clean up all the mess they leave behind. So it's, if you aim for productivity, which I'm always interested in my career since I started, I try to make other engineers more productive and have more impact. And I don't know how to do that. So I'll just try and make them happy.
Yeah.
And if you make them happy, they're more productive. So
exactly.
Software development is a team sport, and 10x developers, it is like watching a football game, right? If you have Messi in the team, you need a good support team. Like otherwise, you need to pass the ball to Messi, and you need to stop goals from being scored against you. And if your team is not set up to support Messi, then there's no way that he can be as productive as he could be.
Yeah, I like that.
So it is all a team sport, and there are some people that want to score goals, and other people want to be in defense, and that's the same thing with software development. So it's not that we can all be Messi.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that analogy.
If you had a team with 11 Messis, it would not be very successful because they would be fighting all the time with each other.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like aspiring productivity, aspiring a higher impact. I think that is something you should do as a software developer, as an engineer.
Yeah, probably also then as a team, as you laid out, it's still a team sport at the end of the day. And I can be better at some aspects of the team.
Yep, exactly. And then, the sports metaphor is a good one. Like if you look at, I started playing football when I was 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
And if you go to one of these games of these 7-year-olds, they're all clumped around the ball.
Absolutely.
Because they follow the ball. And this is like, you can see they usually don't play 11-11, it's 5-on-5, but you see 10 kids surrounding one ball. And that has to do with the physical limits. They can't kick the ball that far, but they also don't understand yet, like how you collaborate and how you pass the ball to each other.
Exactly.
So the more mature you get in your career, the further ahead, the more you have to think about, like, not just your own performance, your own productivity, and not just chasing your own impact, but make the team succeed and influence other people, make their lives better.
Exactly.
And that is not something that comes natural to many software developers. Most of us, including myself, I'm an introvert. I'm not nervous for this thing, but it doesn't excite me that much, right? It is like, it's going to cost me energy. I have to probably recover from this afterwards. And that's just because that's how my brain works. And a lot of engineers are like that.
Yeah.
Like it's sort of self-selection that you go into this profession because you like solving puzzles and you have sort of a debugging mentality and you want to go in and solve things.
Yeah.
And that requires, sort of internal thinking and concentrating on something for hours,
Yeah.
getting into the zone, for instance. So that is a lot of things that as engineers we naturally think about. Like if I want to become more productive, if I want to become a 10x developer, right?
Yeah.
What do I have to do? I have to deliver a lot of code.
Yeah.
That's what 10x developers do. So you write more code than your peers. So how do you do that? By ignoring them. This is the only way you can do this. Like you put yourself in a room and you just write what you are comfortable writing. That's often what happens as well. You see this often happening in smaller organizations, like in startups, where it's very natural to go for results very quickly. Like you have an investor, there's a demo in 2 weeks, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And we need to show our product working by then. Yeah. So what do? You can do the right thing, like long-term investments, things that will persist over decades, or you can just do the thing that you did last year at the competitor or whatever, and you can just mentally clone that and do it again. Yeah. So that is a easy solution. I've seen a presentation by Rich Hickey called Easy versus Simple, and that's a really good representation of that trade-off.
Okay.
So 10x developers often go for things that are easy, and I mean easy in the sense that they use tools that they know, that they've used in the past. Yeah. So maybe they're a Java developer and they know the whole Java stack, and they go into a new organization, they have to build to prototype something. They're not going to do this in Python because they're not going to be as productive, right?
Exactly. It's going to take time.
So they use the tools that they like, that they're productive with. Yeah. And they may not necessarily overlap with what the rest of the organization will benefit from, or other people on the team. Yeah. So that's this trade-off between simple technologies and easy technologies. And that's hard. I mean, especially like now we're starting to talk about like personal trade-offs and company trade-offs, right? And it's like career trade-offs. And so our lives are quite complex as software developers. Like we have to think about not just our personal skills, but we have to think about what's best for the company. Yeah. Let alone like knowing what's best for the customer, right? This exactly. Like, are we building the right thing? So those things are, much more organizational. And so all these thoughts and insights have led me to figure out like what's the key thing that engineers need to develop skill. Yeah. To really grow beyond just thinking about themselves and about becoming a productive engineer, but influencing others, increasing their impact almost exponentially. How do you do that? And I think the key skill there is communication. So communication techniques are not taught in school. I went to the Vrije Universiteit here in Amsterdam. Yeah. I grew up in the Netherlands. I have a Dutch background. I lived half of my life in the US, but I'm still Dutch, and I'm actually back in the Netherlands now. So. Yeah. But I went to the Vrije Universiteit, and I got classes by Andy Tannenbaum, for instance, on operating systems. We wrote shell scripts, file system checkers, very complex technical software. Yeah. We did formal proof techniques and whatever. I didn't get a single course. Yeah. I'm thinking back about my Dutch time, and now I'm sprinkling in Dutch words. Exactly. So I didn't get a single course on communication techniques.
And you studied computer science, right?
I studied computer science. Yeah. So that's the tendency. We think that computer science is a technical problem, but in the end, it's not a technical problem at all. We're solving a problem that is defined by requirements that we have no idea about. Yeah. And we can only find out what the requirements are by talking to the customer.
Exactly.
Like I said earlier, we engineers have a hard time talking to other people. Yeah. Small talk is hard. Like, well, what do we talk about? Talk about the weather. Okay. Talk about politics. No, you can't do that. That's at work. Talk about sports. Yeah, that's safe. Yeah.
That's it's easier. Yeah. I like how it started, and as you laid it out with, well, you can explain it kind of as an itch, right? An itch for problem solving or solutions. And at a university, when you're studying computer science, you get kind of simplified versions of the real world, in that there are problems and there is a solution, and you'll know if you hit the right one or a version of the right one. But in the real world, it's a lot more complex and it's a lot less black and white, in that there are a lot of solutions to a lot of problems. But first you need to figure out what the real problem is, then what solution you can take. And then even the example you gave in simple versus easy, right? An easy solution might work well if you're working on a proof of concept, right? If you're working on an MVP, you need to test your assumptions, get it into the hands of the users. Then the easy solution might be the best one, because it's not necessarily about the solution. It's more about everything around it and getting that feedback. Whilst the simple solution is more for the long term, right? It's more about robustness and working with other people that can build on top of that. It's more foundational in that aspect.
Yeah, and often even the simple solutions are complex, of course.
Yeah.
Because we operate in an environment where we have like external regulatory demands in finance and in health.
Yeah.
There are privacy concerns, cybercrime. So all these things make our job not simple. So I don't want to simplify the problem here, but
exactly.
It's,
simple can still be complex.
It is a mindset thing that you should avoid as an engineer, thinking about easy solutions.
Yeah.
And I've spoken to many developers, like when I introduce myself, and they say like, oh yeah, I'm Joe and I'm a Java developer, or hi, I'm Jane, I'm a backend Go developer. And so these individuals put themselves almost intentionally in a box. Like they say, like, this is me. This one skill that I have that defines me.
Exactly. And
they think that that's a marketing strategy, because then people understand who they are, and they can get a job again in this domain, and they specialize themselves in certain technologies.
Yeah.
And there's nothing against that. I think every engineer is a T. So you have the skills like your horizontal and your vertical, right? And you have to pick a vertical, otherwise bootstrapping yourself will take too long on anything.
Yeah.
So you have some expertise, but you have to like really work on the bar as well, on the top.
Exactly.
And explore other areas, and especially areas that you're not comfortable with. So if you want to grow, you have to understand how the business works. So you have to understand, how does the company make money?
Yeah.
Like, assuming that it's a financial company. It can be non-profit, but then it's your stakeholders. Like, who are your stakeholders?
Yeah.
And what do they care about? How do you communicate with them? Have they expressed their requirements? If you're a startup, you have investors. What do they want, right? They want an IPO in 2 years or something like this.
Exactly.
How do we get there as a team, right? How do we, what is my role in this, and how can I achieve that goal faster?
Yeah.
And all of these things require not just communication techniques. There's a lot of micro skills that you can learn that will set you up, but it's more of a mindset and of a worrying about why are you there in the office, right?
Exactly.
And why are the other people there? Caring about other people.
Yeah.
So this is something you have to learn, and we didn't learn this in school. Like we didn't learn how to organize a meeting.
Yeah.
And it's a very subtle technique, but very important for your effectiveness as a software developer. If you can set up a meeting very effectively.
Yeah.
I've at some point started counting at places where I worked, and then even in the influential ones like Google and Uber, how many meetings I went to where there was no agenda.
Okay.
And there's no goal for the meeting.
Interesting.
And we just show up, and it's just like, okay, so what shall we talk about today?
Yeah. Okay. Just for the sake of it.
Horrible meetings. Right? As an engineer, like I asked my fellow engineer, I've been teaching courses at Uber on communication techniques. And one of I had a big survey. And one of the questions I asked them is like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like meetings? And it's way towards the 1.
Exactly.
So engineers hate meetings.
Yeah.
And then if you start asking deeper, it's not necessarily that they hate meetings, but they hate the meetings they have to go to.
Okay.
And those are the meetings where there is no goal, and they have no clear contribution, and they just go there, and I don't want to stigmatize the product managers here in the audience, but there's a joke going on the engineers. Yeah, I'm just going to the meeting because the product manager is lonely.
Okay.
And they just want to talk to people. And
Yeah.
and then they come in and they ask you like, so how are we doing with the product? Are we making progress? So those kinds of meetings where you have an ill-defined agenda. It's unclear to you what your contributions are.
They're not really effective.
It's unclear what the outcomes are.
Exactly.
Then as an engineer and you're invited to these meetings, you have to be really strong and say like, I'm not going.
Yeah.
And this is not easy, right? Especially if you're a junior engineer, you just show up, maybe you learn something.
Exactly.
But after a while, that learning aspect is not enough anymore.
Yeah.
Because you still have to deliver your code. And this comes back to solving problems and being in the zone. I've worked on a project at Google where we try to analyze what makes specific engineers more productive than other engineers.
Okay.
Now, we all know that you cannot improve anything or measure anything unless you can have data, right? So we need data. So
you need a baseline.
What kind of data do we get? So we basically instrumented their desktop and all the tools that they use. And we looked at their agenda, all the emails that they send, all the documents that they touch, all the code that they... And you throw all of that in a machine learning model. Yeah. Then we figured out that, and we asked them from time to time, are you happy right now? So they had a button on their desk, like 1, 2, 5, and
they needed to press
5 or 3 or 1.
Yeah.
And then you can start finding correlations using machine learning, of course, with people being unhappy and
what they're doing,
being in meetings. But being in a meeting is not necessarily the disruptor. It's because they were trying to solve a problem, and it takes a long time to construct. Like you have to NPM install a lot of things, and then you have to go to a branch, and then you have to compile things, and you try this out, and then you're finally there, and then bing, you jagged away, right?
Exactly.
So these context switches were the most important aspect that we found out of influencing your productivity. So if you can avoid context switching, you will be much more concentrated. And this is not just for software developers, this is for everybody who is in a creative role. So this is also for designers. It's also for, I'll use the example again, product managers.
Sure.
Like if they have to write a complex document with plan and roadmap, for instance, if they're constantly interrupted by email or pings or whatever, then this document is not going to be as good as it could be.
Yeah, if you're doing everything at the same time, it's hard to get one of them done, basically.
So multitasking is, nobody can multitask. If this 10x developer claims that he can multitask too, this is like...
He's a liar.
He's a liar.
Exactly.
So that's, you can maybe do it for a minute, maybe 2 minutes, but it's not a thing that you can do all the time. So avoiding these context switches is very important. And especially when you have meetings, they're the big disruptor for working in the zone. Yeah. So what can you do about this as an individual? Like you're powerless, right? Like your manager invites you to a meeting, you have to go, right? Or it's the all hands from the director and you have to go, right? No, you don't have to go. And this is something that smart organizations have realized already, and they put in place all kinds of technology to figure out when you plan a meeting to make sure that it doesn't disrupt blocks in the meeting. So you keep... So these calendar tools you can integrate with existing calendar tools, and they optimize calendars holistically across the organization. Yeah. But other things you can do is institute like no meeting Wednesday or no meeting afternoon or something like this, right?
Just a block of uninterrupted.
And you as an individual can do that as well. So you cannot stop all the meetings from happening, but most of them you can actually stop if you have a block from 1 to 4, and you call it do not block, do not book, or you say deep work or concentration or whatever.
You just focus.
Focus, that's a good one too. Yeah. So that other people know what your intention is from that moment on. Yeah. And that's the first step to becoming productive.
Yeah, even more productive.
Is organizing your time better. There's actually a step before that, or 2 steps before that. So while we're on the topic here, so I have an acronym that I call FREE. So productivity is free.
What do you mean by free?
So it is FREE. So the F stands for focus. So focus means that you're actually working on the things that are really important.
Yeah.
And I've had feedback in my career at Google at some point, and this was really hurtful because my manager said, everybody likes you, Chris. And any team you show up, everybody wants to work with you. And you would be so awesome if you had more focus.
Okay.
And I was like thinking for weeks, like, what does this mean?
Yeah, what does that mean?
I mean, I was just like, I'm working so hard, right? And it's just like, I come to work every day and I talk to everybody and I deliver so much code and whatever.
Yeah.
So what my manager tried to articulate is that if you work on the wrong things that the stakeholders do not care about,
your output.
You're working really hard.
Yeah.
Your output is like off the charts.
Yeah.
But your impact is really low.
Exactly.
Because you're doing the wrong things. So no matter how effective you are, how productive you are, if you're not working on the right things, then that must be the first thing that you do.
Exactly.
So you have to agree. And like I make it a rule. The first time I meet my manager is like ask them like imagine 3 months from now we meet again.
Yeah.
Like what would you say that, Chris, you've been doing this and this and this. That is awesome, and this is the definition of success.
Yeah.
Like I always say, like, okay, if you want one advice for your career, make your manager happy.
I like that one.
So if you dive a little bit deeper, it's like you have to understand, like, what makes my manager happy is that I solve their problems.
Yeah. What are the expectations?
Or I take their work away, or I clean up this mess, or I do this. But if you don't know, then you might guess.
Yeah.
And guessing is always insecure. And I say make your manager happy, but you have to make more than just your manager happy.
Yeah. It's
all the stakeholders. So how do you know what the stakeholders want? So this comes back to communication, and you need organizational structure. Like most companies use OKRs, objectives and key results. And that gives you enough structure to actually understand your place in the bigger picture and see in what direction you should do.
It can help.
The most effective work.
Yeah.
And then there's, of course, trade-offs between urgent and important. Like we have too much work. Everybody has too much work.
Yeah.
Even if you look at your inbox, right? You have an inbox coming in and so many emails, and I can't read them all. So which ones do you read and which ones do you delete? And so it's almost a side discussion, like how do you effectively handle your communication tools that come towards you?
Yeah.
Same thing for chats, right? It can be very distracting if you listen to every single Slack ping or
every message,
Teams message or whatever.
Yeah.
So those things are really important. So that was the F from free. So you have to have focus. Now I have to think, what was the R? Now I'm drawing a blank.
No worries. It happens sometimes. But you were talking about, so I like the things you laid out about just managing expectations when you first talk to your manager, for example, or get into a new position. It's very important that you know what kind of the goal is of the bigger, the grand picture, and how you fit in and how you can help contribute towards that goal. Because as you mentioned, if there's a prioritized list and for some reason you're working from the bottom and your way to the top, people are still not going to be happy. Your output can be amazing, but you're just working on the wrong things. So making sure you understand what the priorities are makes you even more effective in actually helping the company move towards that goal. And that should be your goal as employee, because you're moving with the company towards those goals that you've probably defined together.
And especially if you're a junior engineer just starting in your career, then it's not expected of you to define that strategy or that vision or mission for the team. Yeah. But the more senior you get, the more expectation there will be that you can actually do this.
Yeah. But the thing you've laid out, the things that take you out of focus and kind of lose your productivity in that way, even the meeting examples you gave, I would say just, can you decline them? Or is that kind of hard to do? If they're not as effective, you can probably challenge that within your organization, right?
So that is the R.
There you go.
It's coming back. So the F is for focus, the R is for result oriented. So this means that anything you do work-wise, but you can also do this in private life.
Yeah.
You have to do with a goal.
Okay.
So if you go to a meeting, you have to ask yourself, why am I in this meeting? How can I make it better? And what's the outcome? And how can I drive this?
Yeah.
If you read a document, or you read a book, or you watch a YouTube video, or you have to ask yourself before you read the document, what is my goal after having read this document? What do I want to get out of it? And it's amazing if you ask yourself that question, that subtle question is like, what do I want to get out of this?
Yeah.
That you can read this document much faster.
Okay.
So you can start skimming the parts that are not so important to you.
Yeah.
And you use the table of contents or the introduction, like we also call the executive summary, right?
Yeah.
So the executive summary is a technique in communication that is designed to make this faster for you to read.
Exactly.
So as an effective communicator, you have to learn all the signals around you, all these little tools that help you, all the road signs basically.
Yeah.
And use them to become more effective.
Yeah.
So that is for reading, but also for developing software. So there's a bug comes out and says, so what am I going to do? What am I going to do with this? Am I going to fix it, or am I going to delegate to somebody else? And so you have to be, result oriented in everything that you do.
Exactly.
And it comes back to that focus thing, of course. If you work on the right thing, then you can also be more effective producing the things that you are delivering.
Yeah, it builds on top of that focus, basically. If you are results oriented and you're reading, for example, you're going to be hyper focused in finding what you're looking for. Even in a meeting, if the goal is clear to you, you're going to look for it, basically.
And if you just Google for speed reading and you want to become faster at reading, right?
Yeah.
This is one of the techniques that they teach you, is to filter the document and just almost like squint your eyes so that everything becomes fuzzy. So you see the structure of the document. So
literally,
and then only read the ones that you're interested in.
Yeah.
And the better you write the document, the better this works.
Yeah.
So that's the sort of the meta level of communication. Like the next time you write a document yourself, you have to start thinking about like, how are people reading this?
Yeah.
And what answers do they want to find in this document to questions, and can I predict this?
Yeah.
And then structure the document in such a way that it's almost like, if you want to find out about this, go here. If you want to find out about that, go there.
Yeah.
So you help them, and they say like, wow, these documents are so easy to read. They don't know why, right? But
I mean, kind of. You're putting yourself in the shoes of the reader or the user. Doesn't really matter if it's a paper or a tool that you're creating. And if they're looking for a specific goal, you can help them by making it very obvious where they can find it.
And we know to do this as software developers with software.
Yeah.
Like we know this, right? We have packages, and we have repositories, and then we have packages, and then we have classes and methods. And so we know how to structure the logic in our code.
Exactly.
In right ways, so that there's separation of concerns, there's no dependencies. But when we write documents, we forget about this, and we have a lot of dependency. This is like one flow, like
one wall of text.
A wall of text,
yeah.
And there's no structure, and there's no pauses in this thing. And
in
code, we don't write functions that are 1,000 lines, right?
Yeah, doesn't make sense.
It doesn't go through code review.
Exactly.
Like make it shorter.
Yeah.
Why? You have to explain that, like testability.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. But when you're reading, there are other things like the limitations of the brain, like how many things can you remember? 7 things or something. So all these things have, even if you're processing how you're processing written text. Yeah. Like Donald Knuth is very well known. He wrote one of the big books on algorithms, like it's called The Art of Programming. Yeah, that's a book series. And when he started writing this, this is way back when, there were no good typesetting systems. Okay, so everything had to be typeset by hand. Yeah, like people had like little pieces of like things, and they put like formulas in there. Yeah, which is horrible to him, but because he got the print back, and no, it's not good. Like no, it should be up. And so he got so upset with that he started writing his own typesetting tools. Yeah, to make that easier to do. And that took a couple years out of his life so that he could write books better.
Exactly.
So that's the kind of investment that he made in his career.
Yeah, for the future, basically.
Otherwise, people wouldn't have liked this book as much.
Yeah.
So this is something you have to think about as communication, like when you do reading. So one of the results you have to get out of it is like, you almost have to have like two separate processes running, right? One is reading and the other one is like watching yourself read and
exactly.
And
keeping that end user in mind.
So they keep and thinking about like, oh yeah, this was really good. Like, why was it so good?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're using a bigger font here. Oh yeah, I'll do that the next time too, right?
Yeah.
So you pick up on good things and you pick up on bad things. This is how we learn coding as well.
Yeah.
Like we go code reviews and we learn the design patterns, and book documentation has design patterns as well. So these are all skills. These are things that we can learn.
Yeah.
And
so that's kind of the results part. Exactly.
So we're still on track.
Yeah.
So the E is about efficiency.
Okay.
So efficiency is doing things faster. So it looks like focus and result oriented, but efficiency is more about, like, we're engineers. We automate repetitive things.
Yeah.
And we know this for functions. So you have the concept like dry, do not repeat yourself. So if you write the same code twice, oh yeah, I got to declare a function and then.
Exactly.
And your life has to be like this. So if you find yourself doing the same thing multiple times, we write a script for it. Mm-hmm. If you see that the workflow in your company is slow because you're always waiting on the builds, you step up and you make the builds faster.
Yeah, you fix it.
And that kind of efficiency, figuring out what tools to use. If you're an engineer working in a shop that uses Git, invest in it. Spend the weekend not watching Twitch or YouTube or football or whatever. Invest in it and study Git, like really study it, understand how it's architected, like how it works.
Yeah. But then what is the difference between kind of this efficiency as you've laid it out or effectiveness? Because if you optimize, you will be more effective in that way.
Yeah, so I think efficiency and effectiveness is very close to each other.
Yeah.
Like you can be very effective without being efficient.
Okay.
And the other way around, maybe.
Yeah,
you can be very efficient and not effective. So the two words are very close in English language. But for me, it's about efficiency here. So we need to think about this as a logistical problem that we're solving. Yeah. And there are 20 steps in there, and I want to make it 10 steps.
Exactly.
So this is what we do as engineers.
Yeah.
If you use Visual Studio Code as the editor.
Yeah.
What are all the shortcuts? Have you ever actually looked at them?
Absolutely.
Like, why are the shortcuts there, right? These are there, so you can become more efficient.
Yeah.
Like type faster. But maybe for you, it works better to work in Emacs and figure out how can you use the same the language server protocol that is in VS Code in your Emacs setup so that you get completions for your code faster. So all these things make yourself a more efficient developer. So that's the third. And then the fourth one is, that's the hardest for us engineers. That's the topic of empathy. So empathy means that you understand other people and what moves them and what impact your action have on them. Yeah. So this is hard. It's not easy. There are lots of books written on this. I won't give you an introduction in emotional intelligence, but it's one of the 5 dimensions of emotional intelligence. But it starts with self-awareness. So if you can understand your own emotions, and like I said earlier, introvert engineers just want to solve puzzles. We don't want to think about emotions, right? Yeah. But we all have emotions. We're irritated. We're tired, we're overwhelmed, we're excited, and all of these emotions we go through. We're humans. So the first step to actually do something about your self-awareness is to name your emotions. Yeah. So if you're happy, just say it to yourself. oh, this is a great day. This was awesome today.
Yeah.
And I do that when I have I still do coding and like at my level of engineering right now. And when I solve something complex and it's taking me like 2 days to get there and finally it works, I celebrate, right? Yay, it works.
It's a good day today.
And I look, hey guys, it works. Even like today, I'm sitting at home, nobody's there.
Yeah.
This is something you celebrate and we're happy. So name your emotions and then say, why am I happy? And then you say, yeah, because I solved this problem. And then you say like, why did I solve this problem? How did I do this? And what made it so good? And so then you start seeing like, oh, this recipe leads to being
success.
happy.
Yeah.
Now, same thing with annoyed. So you're in a meeting, you're very annoyed, you're grumpy. You ask yourself, well, first you tell yourself, I'm grumpy.
Yeah.
And then you say like, okay, why am I grumpy? And then rather than just focusing on that negative emotion and it changing your behavior and your other people are picking up on this.
Yeah.
You're figuring out like, I'm grumpy because I'm in a meeting where I have no contribution.
Exactly.
And nobody's listening to me. And I have to shut down my laptop because they said no laptops in this meeting. And I have to solve this problem. And this is like, the deadline is going. I have to stay in the office longer now. And this is like, and that makes you, so now you start thinking like, okay, this is the reason to my emotions.
Yeah.
So if you can start, developing the self-awareness, like how do your emotions influence your behavior and therefore your impact?
Yeah.
If you do this for a long time, then you can start projecting this on other people as well. Like you go into a meeting and you give somebody a compliment and you can see them being all happy like the whole meeting long.
Yeah.
You say like, and that's very cheap, right? This is a surprising technique that I teach most junior engineers is like give compliments as many as you can. Like, like I really like your shirt. This is awesome, right? That's really cool. I'll just share this. I walked into this building and I gave a lot of compliments about the setup of CBA here, the building itself. I really like it. I've been into many engineering buildings in the world. Yeah. And we all want to be like the Google campus, right?
For sure.
But I like it here much more than the Google one because it feels homey. Yeah. And there's this atmosphere. So I wanted to portray that. And I said like, I think people will really like working here because of this reason. Yeah. So these kinds of compliments are very cheap to hand out. Yeah. And they've done research at academic research about giving compliments. And of course, other people feel better. Absolutely. But the surprising thing is that if you give a compliment, you also feel better. Okay. It's almost like giving presents, right? Yeah. It's nice to wrap a present and then hand it over to somebody and they're really happy with the present. You're also happy. Yeah. Just by donating this thing. And that's the same thing with compliments. So if you can give constructive, meaningful, to the point compliments, that is something that is very useful in your career. Yeah. So that's a good thing to start with, to develop that self-awareness, and then empathy is by getting a better relationship with other individuals. So I said earlier, like, I like your shirt. Yeah. But that is a cheap compliment. Right? This is like...
That's easy.
That's easy. Yeah. So you got to do a little bit better.
Okay. So it's not just compliments then, right? But because I think it's because it's about feedback, basically, in what you're doing, if you're doing it the right way, if you can do it better, or just to have that discussion and that back and forth. And obviously the goal is to then be better afterwards, or to take that next step together. Yep. Because those first things, right, focus, results orientated, and efficiency, I think a lot of developers have that down, or they get to that level where it's kind of, it's adequate. Yep. But that last one, that empathy one, that one was one where I didn't expect it.
Yeah, and that's also the one that is more difficult. Yeah. And that's harder to develop, and you have to put energy into it. Yeah. Sometimes you have to practice, and but it's a skill. We can learn it the same way that we learn Java or Python or Django or whatever framework.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to study and you have to understand what it is. You see examples, and the longer you do it, the better you get at it. Yeah. And it's really required for gaining impact. So if you want to get more impactful in an organization or even in real life, you have to move away from analyzing what makes you as an individual more productive.
Okay.
So these aspects we just talked about, like focus and result-oriented and all that,
Yeah.
that's for you, right? For you as an individual.
That's a personal
And this
one.
is very important to make you make more money or get that opportunity to work on this thing that you want to do or join this other company that and so on.
Yeah.
But if you forget about how to make organizations more productive, like how do I impact other people?
Yeah.
And how do I influence other people? Like what software engineers don't realize is that, well, I'm going to exaggerate here. 100% of our time we're doing sales.
Yeah.
And
Sales.
we don't realize this.
Okay.
So as an engineer, you're writing code, right? Yeah, there's a problem.
Yeah.
A problem always have multiple solutions. And you
Always.
pick one solution, you implement it, and now you have to argue why did you pick that one answer, and
Yeah.
so you go to a code review, and then there's criticism on your execution, right? Spaces and semicolons and
They should be there.
names and stuff.
Yeah.
But the real good code reviews, they start asking the question why, and why are you doing this code, and why have you chosen this solution, not the other one?
Yeah.
What are the trade-offs that you considered? And it comes down to good decision making. So if you're an engineer that just makes random decisions, they might be the good one. So you might be very lucky and always pick the right solutions.
That's going to be rare.
Or nobody notices, right?
Yeah.
This is like you just keep going. That often happens as well. Like
Yeah.
if you have a code review where everybody just agrees, like looks good to me.
Yeah.
And you and I have an agreement, right? If I
We back each other.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, it's got to ship like 4 o'clock the deadline.
Yeah, we got to go
Can
soon.
you just say okay?
Yeah.
So it's very hard at that moment to say like why?
Yeah.
Should we really be doing this? Shouldn't we be like using this other kind of database instead of this one? And
Yeah.
And big organizations or effective organizations have figured this out, and they instituted something called design documents.
Yeah.
Or what they call it, a request for feedback or request for proposal. There's some acronym that describes a type of document that describes the problem.
Yeah.
It has a real defined structure. So it describes the problem and the solution that we've chosen with all the benefits because it's the perfect one.
Yeah.
And then we look at the alternative solutions that we
options.
discarded. And then there are some complications because of like internal dependencies and whatever.
Yeah.
And then you open up this document to the stakeholders, but also to the specialists on the different topics. So you might ask somebody in security, like, could you look at our plan for rolling out this new feature?
Yeah.
They look at a document, and then earlier I mentioned like result-oriented, right? So
Yeah.
this person will go in, okay, I'll directly skim to the technical implementation and see if they're using
X, Y, and
SSL,
Z.
whatever, right?
Yeah.
So they have laser vision on that particular domain.
Yeah.
But if I use the product manager as an example, they're also on this document as the person has to sign off. They have to agree on the requirements that we describe or the use case of the stories, or
Yeah.
Maybe the designer has to think about this, if we can implement this flow in this right way, if the UX is correct. So there's a lot of individuals that have to contribute to this decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I, as an engineer, I've written this document. I have to sell this to you, to all these different people, right?
Yeah.
So this is the empathy part again. So now I have to describe the trade-offs between the different solutions, but also in the right words. And coming back to like, how do you read this thing fast? You have to write it correctly. So you have to use bullet points and all these things.
Yeah.
So this is a complex thing that you have to worry about, all these different dimensions.
Yeah.
But it is something as an engineer, you always do selling. Even if you just implement code and you go to a code review, you're thinking about like, how can I get it through this code review as fast as possible? Right?
Yeah.
This is your aim. Like you want to get it done. You're going to get over because you're going to work on the next thing.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I was talking to my buddy Mark Grol yesterday actually, and he says what makes a really good developer is first figuring out you have options, right? Because there's always different ways in doing things. and then selecting one or two that are the right one or you think are the right one for the use case, right? And if option A doesn't work, you can shift back and still choose option B because you've learned along the way.
Yep.
And you should be able to let go of the initial option that you chose, basically. What less experienced developers do is they fixate on the one option that they think is the right one, and they just completely go with that one. But I've never heard it attributed to kind of selling your options or selling the choices that you've made to other people. But it is kind of, I can see that analogy work, basically, because I've made a choice and I kind of need to convince you why that one was the right one.
Yep.
And before that, I need to know what my options were and the decisions I've made.
So these design documents can become a representation of you as an engineer. Like I've been in promotion committees at Google where we analyze the packet. They call it packet.
Mm-hmm.
So you look at the contributions of an engineer,
Yeah.
and that's all the code they delivered, all the documents they wrote, and you zone in on the design documents that they wrote.
Yeah.
Because you want to see, like, how do they think as an engineer?
Yeah.
Do they have these attributes that we just discussed, right?
Exactly.
So you look for, you're almost like a detective.
Yeah.
You're looking for the crime scene, like where did they kill somebody? It's just like, and what a lot of engineers think is like, okay, so if I want to show my I have to write all these documents.
Yeah.
And they spend all their energy in claiming a stake first, and they write the document and it's their document, and then other people have to contribute to this.
Yeah.
Well, if you see this as a collaboration exercise, like I mentioned, the security expert that has to look at this, the UX designer. So why not put their name on top? If you make them part owner of this document, or you collaborate with other engineers in another division which have a shared roadmap on this particular feature. Yeah. This is what we actually were looking for in the promotion committee.
Okay.
Is how many names are on top of your document. Yeah. And if there's just one name, just you, it's actually a minus. Yeah. And this is contradictory. Like it's the same thing like writing patents or whatever, right? Yeah, I want all the patents on my name. It's just like, but that's not going to make you the most impactful or the most successful at an organization. Exactly. The emphasis has to be on collaboration. How can you make other people shine? How can you make other people, how can you lead? How can you show by example how other people can grow to the same level and achieve? So these things are, I hope I painted a projection from going from focusing on your individual productivity, on your own impact, to slowly thinking about how do I impact other people. Yeah. Feedback is a really good example. Is like we think feedback is between a manager and an individual. Yeah. That's not true. Absolutely not. You can give feedback to anybody. Yeah. So but the way you deliver the feedback is really critical. Yeah. You can destroy relationships by just telling somebody they're an idiot, basically, right? Yeah. This is you won't say it in that words, but that's what they think. So delivering feedback and receiving feedback, that is a key skill to getting forward as well. So I listed like 15 skills you have to learn. Exactly. It must be very depressing, yeah. But I like that we started with the individual, right? Because before kind of navigating this topic, I thought it was going to be about collaboration, about making your peers stronger. And yes, that is part of it. But first you need to get your own stuff in order before you can be and take that step to also help the other people around you. Yep, you have to deliver your own stuff. Like I was going to use another word. Because other engineers pick up on this very quickly. Exactly. And they will recognize it. So we have a radar for this. Like as engineers, we just don't know how to do it. But we do detect the fakers around this. Exactly. Yeah. So you have to be authentic. You have to, I always say about communication as well, you have to be fact-driven. So if you don't know what you're talking about, it's going to be very hard. And you have to poke holes, make up things, and you're gonna, and that's why I always say, like, even in my personal life, I don't lie. Because I'm not smart enough to remember all the lies that I've told in the past. So this is like, that's hilarious. It's the same thing with work. You have to deliver. You have to research first before you can become the expert on something.
Yeah.
And you have to become the expert before you can sell something.
Yeah.
So this is that order. So invest in your personal career, and if your expectation is that you deliver, I don't know, 10 features this month, deliver the 10, of course. But also think about these other things, like how do I grow the junior developers around my team?
Yeah.
How do I pick up if they're in? How do you think about, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? That question in interviews that everybody hates, right? I want your job. This is like, but do you really know where you want to be in 3 years?
Yeah, what are those long-term goals?
And how do you get there? How do you set your personal goals?
Yeah.
And do they align with the company goals? And how do you execute on them? These are critical skills if you want to grow. And like I said, money is not that important. Impact, recognition. In the end, we want to be happy. So, and if you want to become a happy engineer, you have to invest in making other people happy first. Yeah,
I really like that. I really like how we got there as well. But still, if you focus on communication, right, and you have your own stuff in order, there's still something, and I don't know if it's categorized on the empathy side, but it's more of a charm, and it's more of a kind of likability, or even in Dutch they call it gunfactor, which is basically I'll give it to you, but I won't give it to someone else, even though you might be on equal levels. There's still something there. And I think that might be, I don't know if it's inherent in someone, but it has a lot to do with stuff that you can't really learn.
So there's an American word for that that's called charisma. So some people have charisma. They walk into the room and the room lights up. And often that is related to physical, and somebody looks handsome. Like, it's hard to be likable if you are not beautiful. It's a lot easier to be likable if you're considered through the norms to be beautiful. So that is something, that's hard. How do you become more beautiful?
Exactly. How do you get that charisma?
So developing charisma is not easy as well, but it can start. You can fake it till you make it. And like I mentioned this earlier, is by giving compliments. So you go in and first of all, you start off with a compliment, and then everybody is already like, oh yeah, I like this guy, right? And then the only thing you can do then from that moment on is ruin it.
Break it.
And then you ask them deep questions. And there's an aspect of emotional intelligence called active listening. So that's a technique you can apply. And I'll give you an interesting example here. So you just tell me something and I'll do active listening.
What do you mean? Just I have to say anything right now? And
yes, that's right. Yeah, you can say anything. Like,
look at that. Yeah. I can see that you're listening because you're kind of replying what I'm saying.
So what I did is I first looked at you, right? We had eye contact. Then I nodded. Yes, yes. I said, yes, yes, yeah. And then I repeated what you just said. And that is a very simple technique. It's just to summarize what the other person said. So you summarize what they just said, and then you give your own spiel to it. Don't score on your own ideas. Don't push your own agenda, but you relate their emotions or their topic that they're just talking about in that particular moment. And you link that to a personal experience that you had. So we actually did this during the interview a couple times, right? I was talking about something, and then you said, that reminded me of this interview that I had with, or this. So this makes me feel like, you were actually listening to me.
Someone's paying attention.
And you were really paying attention to me as an individual.
I like that.
So that is the concept of active listening. And if you hone in on that and you combine it with something like giving compliments, meaningful compliments, not just about their hair or whatever. You can start with that. But it's, then you can easily build charisma as well. And it doesn't matter what you look like or who you are. Like you can influence other people in all directions.
And that's I think it was quite a journey in how you get to that 10x developer. So I'm going to try and summarize all the things that you said. Let's see if I actively listen. But first you need to get your own stuff in order, right? You need to be focused, or you need to figure out how you can get that focus. and also remain results orientated, not just in the things that you're doing on a personal level, but also on a company level, right? And your personal goals can align with your company goals in that aspect. Be efficient or effective, probably both is best in what you're doing or what your team is doing, and challenge it if it's not there, so you can get it to that level that it's adequate or even good. And then have empathy with people around you, right? Give compliments or give feedback where it's valuable, and where you can do something with it. Don't just be a douche to be a douche, but also work on your charisma and work that forward. And once you have your own stuff in order, look to those around you and how you can lift those up. Because an effective team makes a good team, makes a great team, which means you are kind of a multiplier in that setting within the organization then.
Yep. And I want to finish off with a great quote by a Dutch icon, Johan Cruyff.
Cool.
Johan Cruyff.
Yeah.
So he's a world famous football player, but also coach. He sadly left us way too early.
Yeah.
So he said, if you want to be happy, you have to do the things that make you happy. So,
simple as that.
So that's a typical Johan Cruyff quote. But I want to add to that. So if you want to be happy, just make other people happy.
Yeah.
And then you will be very successful at life.
That's awesome, man. I love it, Chris.
Yep.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll do this again sometime.
Okay, certainly. Bye-bye.
Cool. Chris Laffra, everyone.
Beyond Coding. From your sponsors, Zebia, creating digital leaders.